how this plane got certified, what the process was, what FAA did, what Boeing did, how the training was both developed and then communicated, not just to U.S. pilots, but also the pilots who fly for non-U.S. airlines, and like Ethiopia, for instance, or Lion Air. And all that takes place separate from any of the issue about fines for that work that they did. So just review, but yeah, the short answer is yes. So is that salmon colored? Yeah.
Regarding the Navy water contamination with the firefighting foam,
Yeah.
my understanding is the Navy alone chooses which water it tests, which wells. There's no oversight. Is there a way to get the EPA involved with that for an oversight?
So the question is about PFOA and PFAS, the firefighting foam in the water, and the Navy, the assertion is the Navy doesn't have separate oversight as a way to get the EPA to do oversight.
Where they test,
Of where they test and so on, yeah. We can look into that, we'll look into that. But my understanding in talking with both Coupville here, as well as other members of Congress with similar problems, and this is not an uncommon issue. And it's not an uncommon issue with firefighting foam, whether it's used by the Navy, the Air Force, or by commercial airports. This is not, so it's not unique to the Navy. It might be unique here to Coupville. But from a Navy's perspective, they are, if there's money to be spent on mitigating the circumstances until they get a fix, and then paying for the fix, the Navy, you can go community to community in this country, and they're doing that. So that actually is happening. It's happening here in Coupville as well. So it may not be done, I get that, but they are doing it. And so, yeah.
But there's issues and neighbors are showing positive, the Navy is refusing.
Well, then when we can help, we can follow up with those specific instances as well. Absolutely, there's no question about it, because the Navy will be responsive on this. We've been clear about that. Coupville's been clear about that. But there is an EPA standard that isn't, actually it's not a standard, I want to be clear about that too. It's actually not an enforceable standard. It's an EPA, I don't want to call it a recommendation, but there's no regulation or law that the EPA is using as the standard for measurement. And so from a legal perspective, just the law has to apply, and if there's not a law that applies, you can't enforce it, right, through the law. It's not a law.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. Members of Congress don't enforce laws. Yeah, well, to date, on this particular issue, the Navy has been more responsive than not.
Oh, they haven't?
I know you may not agree with that. There's reasons that, I understand there are reasons that you're angry at the local Navy and the U.S. Navy. But on this issue, they've been much more responsive than I expected. And if you go community to community in this country, yes, there are still problems with PFOA and PFAS, and there's still problems with the Navy not responding enough. But it doesn't mean they're not responding, and it doesn't mean we're going to continue to work with the Navy to get them to be responsive. Guy with the mustache. The only guy with the mustache who raised his hand. Chris, write it down.
How did the growlers get certified?
They go by no certifications.
I'm involved with that. Guy with a hat and the. Oh my God, there's two guys with hats.
Yes, Paul Willer with four quick questions. How many homes do you think there's 5 million for sound mitigation will cover?
I don't know, Bob.
One thing I can offer.
It's a pilot program. First off, it's not a national program. It's a pilot program. it's first of its kind. We still have to get the Senate to agree to it, and we have to fund it. But it is not designed to be a national program at this time. It's designed to be a pilot program, to be specific. So we'll just go from there. In the back, the impatient guy with the glasses. Yeah. It's in your eyes, man.
You know, Congressman, I've spent 32 years serving this country, and most of it's been naval aviation. And I supported what they did for a long time, until I started losing sleep over this matter. Now, the deal is, I broke down Coupville Air Force Base. The Air Force had a program where they soundproofed all the houses. They did it.
That's not gonna work.
300 of them.
Soundproof
So,
program.
it doesn't work. The other thing is, because I've been in naval aviation forever, how can't we get them to get the F-35? It's a V-stall. They don't need anything more else.
You don't want that. That's 5 times louder.
So with regards to the Air Force program of soundproofing, we'll look into that. I don't know that as a program. They might have done it as a one-off.
It was a while.
Okay, well, that doesn't make it a program. I mean, in terms of a long-standing thing. So I think that's what I'm having to deal with in the Department of Defense. There isn't an actual program of record that has a continual stream of money to address sound mitigation. And that's what we're trying to do with this pilot program. So that's first. Second, I think I've got enough growler problems. I don't need an F-35 problem. So,
we, out of this community, we worked hard and passed a bill banning all of PFAS chemicals, every last 3,501 of them, in food packaging and the firefighting foam. I took all that data to Captain Arney, along with the substitute foams that are biodegradable. He told me, we don't have to follow your state rules, we are federal.
Yep.
And
I'm not going to comment on a conversation you had with Captain
I'm
Arney or
saying
anyone else.
that
For that matter. What's the point you want to
The
make?
point is, they continue to have these materials stored at the OLF and at Alt Field. They're poisoning the aquifer in out at Alt Field and down Clover Valley Creek. They've knocked out 14 families in our area. We've been on bottled water for 3 years now. And he won't remove the cause of the problem from the field. It makes no sense. The substitutes are available, they work in the equipment, they're the same price. And I don't like being treated this way by somebody that's supposed to be working for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to continue to work with the Navy to get this problem solved. I don't know what.
Remove the source of the
One more.
poison.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
the solution.
China Lake. China Lake, millions of acres.
See, it's not Lemoore. Someone says it's China Lake. So
It's
you already
both
got a
of them.
problem.
It's both of them. High-speed flight corridor.
Way back.
Okay, thank you very much for the work you're doing. It's a good start. However, if you do insulate homes,
Yeah.
one of the nice things about living on Whidbey Island is we're able to go outside.
Exactly.
You go through all of this, mitigation, you insulate the houses, and the jets are flying, we're held prisoner in our own home.
Yes.
And to be held prisoner in my own home is almost worse than wearing the hearing protection inside now. What do you have as mitigation for when our children are waiting for the bus
I don't.
outside?
I don't.
Well, why?
I'm working on the.
I have a solution.
Great.
Move them.
Move the growlers.
So in preparation for this meeting, there was a group who tweeted me, who said, show up at this thing and ask Rick Larsen lots of questions. And I said, I saw that and I said, great, show up and ask a lot of questions. I'd love to have you here. And it was indivisible. So in respect to those folks who let me know they're coming and actually offered questions ahead of time so I could have halfway decent answer. Are there any folks from the Indivisible group who came in direct response to the tweet? Yeah? Great.
Good morning and Shabbat Shalom. My name is Stephanie Hammer and I'm a founding member of Indivisible Whitby, and I'm also a founding member of Teachers Against Child Detention, which was started by our own Washington State and National Teacher of the Year, Mandy Manning. And Representative, I'm here to ask you about
Is this about the Indivisible questions?
Yes, this is about the your affirmative vote on the sanitized border emergency supplemental. I called your office twice and I tweeted this question to you, and I also gave it to Adam.
I am
So you
listening, and I'm
Okay,
looking at the.
so this is part of the Indivisible mandate.
Yeah, yeah.
I am, and other members of Indivisible are appalled by your affirmative vote, particularly when your colleagues, Pramila Jayapal, Ted Lieu, Ilan Omar, AOC, and many others, including Nadler, voted against it. I have information for you. You're a brilliant man. You've maybe seen it from the southernborder.org that enumerates all of the ways that this sanitized bill not only falls short, but makes the situation worse for incarcerated children and families because there are no more safeguards. My question is, how in the world could you have voted in favor of this? And my follow-up is, what are you going to do personally to fight for these kids and families who are in our custody?
So thanks for coming. Thanks for giving me a heads up on the questions. I appreciate that. I did want to reward folks because some folks see these community copies as a pop quiz for me, which usually results in inadequate answers. If you give me questions ahead of time, we can get some research done and get back to you on that. And the Indivisible folks were good about getting info to me ahead of time, which I appreciate. So first off, with regards to my colleagues voting against it, you've named some folks. You've failed to name the 55% of Democrats who voted for it in the House of Representatives. So keeping in mind, a minority of the majority voted against it. Second, in the Senate, it passed 84-8. So a clear majority, a bipartisan majority in the Senate voted for it. So if the standard you're using is, as a Democrat, for me, that Democrats were against it, that's not the case. A clear majority of Democrats.
That's not the point I'm making,
well,
just to clarify.
By outlining some of my colleagues, you're making a case that Democrats voted against it, but the majority voted
I
for it.
apologize for that implication.
So
that was not the point I was trying to make.
The second thing is that the substantive differences between the House bill and the Senate bill, probably best described by Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, when she said, the Senate bill is a good bill, the House bill is a better bill. Yep. It was never a worse bill. It was a good bill versus a better bill, according to the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The bigger differences between the two, and by the way, I could spend 10 minutes walking through how similar they are. First off, very similar. First off, both are $4.6 billion, a lot of money. We're trying to address the first issue we're trying to address is the fact that President Trump's policies, in my view, at the border are such a disaster and such a failure that they aren't working, and as a result, Department of Health and Human Services and other agencies are running out of money in an attempt to try to cover the fact that these policies, the border security and immigration policies, have been a failure. And so this bill is really playing catch up so that we can get to fixing bigger problems. There are, again, similarities. The amount of money for detention facilities is the same, $795 or so million. The amount of money for medical care and other things like consumables, food, water, sanitary, $112 million, both bills. $35 million in both bills for transportation of migrants between between detention center facilities in order to have dollars to move people around so you can try to address overcrowding. You know, and address, and then because there's overcrowding, it's a separate issue. We're trying to address the immediate problem. $45 million for medical support in both bills. Again, these are areas where they're the same. $15 million in both bills. So I have $15 million in one, $10 million in the Senate bill for legal orientation program to educate migrants on their legal rights. So pretty close. $100 million to restore and increase legal services for unaccompanied children in both bills. Again, very similar. Where there's a big difference, there was $200 million in the House version to create an integrated multi-agency processing center pilot program for families, but that was a pilot program. We don't have that now, so we're going to have to create that from full cloth. That did not exist in the Senate. It would be good to do that, and there's nothing to preclude us from continuing to try to do that. This one I don't agree with, but it's $144.8 million in the Senate version for the Department of Defense to respond to the increase in folks, and this is really getting at I think housing and detaining folks on military bases. That's something we can still address. I'm on the Defense Committee. We're writing the defense bill. It'll be on the floor. We talked about it. It includes noise monitoring stuff. It includes a lot of other things, and we can try to address that. And I hope we will try to address that on the floor of the House by preventing spending of that money. Influx shelters. There's a 2-month difference in meeting standards. 12 months to meet standards of these shelters in the House bill. 14 months in the Senate. Not a big difference in that. Where there are standards that the House wanted to put in the bill that the Senate, and accountability measures, what the House wanted to put in the bill, the Senate didn't. But also where there are standards and accountability measures in the House bill, there are also waivers allowed by the Secretary of Health and Human Services to get waivers for those meeting those standards at certain times. So you essentially have a kind of a push on that, I would argue for you. The Senate bill does not include the requirement to spend Northern Triangle money for El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. We included it, but we also included it in the Senate, in the House version of the Senate Foreign Operations bill. So it's still, that's still in play. And the Northern Triangle money, that is the dollars for aid, for capacity building for the legal system, the court system, for law enforcement, to fight corruption in these countries, these mainly 3 countries that are where the circumstances exist where it's driving people out. There's funding in the appropriations bill already in the 2020 bill, and then language to require the President and the administration to spend money that we've already appropriated for these Northern Triangle issues. So the point I'm making is that the rhetoric on this issue is one thing. The reality, if you walk through the bills, is very different.
Yeah, I'm looking at the bill now, and I'm not as smart as you, but from what I can
yes,
understand
you're
is that the
smarter than me.
oversights have been stripped out. So who's going to make sure that these things happen, sir?
Just because we didn't, I'll say this, just because an oversight provision did not stay in the bill does not mean we don't have oversight. We have oversight over anything we want in Congress. Do we exercise it? Yes, we exercise it. The Senate may not, and they might. But I can tell you, even though Jerry Nadler voted against that bill, which I just found, thank you, I didn't know he had voted against it. Jerry Nadler is not going to say, oh, well, we pulled the oversight out of that bill, so I'm not going to be able to ask these questions and hold him accountable. That's just not the case. Jerry Nadler is running roughshod right now in this administration for very good reason. He gets to the Mueller report, and he's going to run roughshod on this administration, and so is Pramila, and so is Ocasio-Cortez, and so am I. And you asked me what I'm doing personally. I've got a laundry list of bills, the Keep the Families Together Act, which prohibits DHS from separating families. That's Pramilla's bill, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We're also, so I'm on Pramilla's bill, the Family Case Management Program, which the Obama administration started as an alternative. Actually, it shouldn't be the alternative, it should be what we do, to keep families together, as well as provide asylum seekers the ability to come to the United States to get intensive case management while they're waiting for their hearing, their asylum hearing. This program resulted in some, tens of percents of folks showing up to their asylum hearing who weren't in the program, the Family Case Management Program, to nearly 99% attendance at asylum hearings, because they want to stay in this country and they want to go through the process to stay in this country. And so I'm on the Family Case Management bill. The dignity for detained immigrants, which would reform the immigration detention system by ending the use of private facilities. I'm on that bill. So, you're looking at one vote of $4.6 billion, a lot of money, but to address an immediate problem. And I would argue, perhaps, maybe not you, but maybe some of my colleagues, losing sight of the long game here. We still have a lot. We never take a vote and the thing is over. So it drives all of you crazy. Nothing ever ends in Congress, right? There's always the next thing, and there's always the next thing on the same thing. And if you believe that this one vote is we're done, then you're wrong. There's a lot of work left to do to address the continuing problems at the border, which I argue, and for as much as perhaps, I know it's not a political event, perhaps we more often vote with each other than not, the trolls on my Facebook site who are against immigration, and they hate it when I say this is a Trump-induced crisis, it is absolutely a Trump-induced crisis. But that doesn't mean I don't have the responsibility to try to fix it. And this bill goes a long way to fixing it. It doesn't go as far as the House version went, but it goes a long way, and we're not done. You got my attention here.
Yeah, Big Paul, and following up on maybe on your talk about the long picture.
That's fine. I just
have a question and comment. Okay. Anyway, my question. First of all, I want to congratulate you. I believe I'm right on this. You supported the repeal of the authorization for use of military force that was put on the national defense bill.
Yeah, they repealed it. We repealed the Afghanistan AUMF.
Yeah, which in effect gave the president the authority to put our military troops anywhere, and they've done so in about 18 nations that we know of. Probably a lot more than that. So this is something Congress, I'm sure, should, of all persuasions, want to control the presidency, particularly with an unstable person there. And okay, so my question I'm getting to now that it has gotten through the House and the Senate, I think the versions are a little bit different, which means it goes to the conference committee. What can your role be there to make sure that we have doesn't get watered down?
Yeah, sure. So the question is largely about the defense bill, the National Defense Authorization Act, be clear, the Senate passed their version the other day, today's Saturday, I think Thursday, maybe yesterday. We passed ours out of committee. So we have not passed ours out of the House of Representatives yet. So when we do that, there'll be a conference committee. And the challenge we have right now in the House version of the defense bill is that the Republicans on the Defense Committee provided 2 votes to pass it. A defense bill that gave a 3.1% pay increase to our men and women in the military. All right. If nothing else, they should have voted for it. But because of other things, because of Democratic priorities in the defense bill, they voted against it. So we've got to basically rely on Democrats in the House to vote for a defense bill. Right now, I don't know if we have the votes, because there are folks who never voted for a defense bill, who are Democrats. And so we're working on them, but there are things that are important, I think, to Democratic priorities and national security. One is the repeal of the AUMF for Afghanistan. Second, we're going to have, on the floor, we're going to have an amendment to, prohibit an AUMF for Iran. Right? We're gonna try to stop the president from using existing AUMFs, authorizations to use military force for Iran, as well as say we won't be able to develop a separate AUMF for Iran. If he wants to do that, essentially he's got to come to Congress. So I want to get one more point. The other, we're going to allow an amendment to reverse the administration's ban on allowing transgendered individuals to serve in the military. So we're going to do that too. We're going to have an amendment to extend FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, to all federal employees as well in the defense bill. In addition to that, we ban the development of people call it a tactical nuclear weapon, some people call it a usable nuclear weapon, some people call it a low yield nuclear weapon. Someone used to say there's no such thing as a low yield nuclear weapon, there's a lower yield nuclear weapon. But the Navy's been developing the W-76-2, which is a tactical nuclear weapon to be used on submarines and used from submarines. And we want to ban the development of that. I want to stop the development of a usable nuclear weapon. So there are a variety of things that I think Democrats could support because they move forward on inclusion. They move forward on non-proliferation. They move forward on accountability over any administration. It's not just this administration, any administration, on taking this country to war, and a variety of other things. There's also things folks will probably be uncomfortable with as Democrats. But I think that so we have some work to do. When we get back next week, we're in session through Friday of next week. We're in session for a while next week. The week after 4th of July. Thanks. So like on the 12th, I think, July, we're voting on this, and we're counting the votes to be sure Democrats can deliver this, because we need a strong position relative to the Senate and relative to the administration. So you had to follow up.
Yeah. You're saying that the authorization for military force in Afghanistan and Iran, this act was anywhere.
No. So the AUMF for Afghanistan was written in 2001. I see what you're saying. The question was, this act was for anywhere. So separately, we're going to have an amendment about an AUMF in Iran saying you can't use AUMFs for Iran. That's going to be a separate issue. The existing AUMF, there are two of them. The 2001 is an AUMF, they call it for Afghanistan, but it is written broadly. And then there's the 2003 AUMF for Iraq, which some people think I voted for some reason. It's been 16 years, people. I haven't voted. I didn't vote for it. No one in this room, but others. So the 2001 AUMF, which I did vote for, was to, it addresses Al-Qaeda or associated groups. Right? So what's happened over the last 16 years is this term of associated groups. The Bush administration, the Obama administration, and the Trump administration, they all have one thing in common, at least one thing in common. They continue to blow the doors open on what an associated group is. And that's what you mean by it's in 18 countries. So it was written broadly in some respects. It was written specifically to Al-Qaeda and associated groups. So legally, and this is an oversight issue that we continually pound on with this administration, the Obamas and the Bushes, continually pound on is about the legal justification, piecing it together. I will say this, they're always pushing the envelope. It doesn't matter who it was, the Pentagon can't help itself. And so Congress needs to be very aggressive about that. It also underscores why we need to repeal the 2001 AUMF and replace it. If you want to repeal and replace, it's repeal and replace it with one that is up to date, that is more modern, that's written for 2019 instead of 2001. Because there are some things that some activities that the military can undertake legally, and they don't need an AUMF for. But there are some things that they're trying to blow the doors open on a few things, and we're trying to continually pull them back on that. I assure you that I'm doing my part on that to try to pull them back, but I get what you're saying, and hopefully you watch this space a little bit, and for the next couple weeks.
I did have one thing for the record.
Okay, for the record, quickly.
Yeah, I live about 6 miles south of the OLF, and normally there's lights go in the water out in front of us, and I've recorded 118 decibels. Okay, now, I call into the tower.
Okay, for the record, give it to Chris. Go ahead. Yeah, give it to Chris. Right, Chris, raise your hand.
I'm Hilary Turner, I'm in Ledgewood Beach, and I'm coming back to your question about getting bills reconciled. So, at first, thanks for all you are doing to help the noise issues and the mitigations. I notice in here the House must work with the Senate to reconcile this bill. It's not through yet. You've got the bill in there, right? The House must work with the Senate, right, to pass the final bill. So, we don't have any of these things you put in yet. They're on the record.
I told, and that's what I
What's
said.
your feeling about how optimistic you are of, number one, getting the Senate to work with you, number two, your Republican colleagues on the other side? Are you optimistic? And is there anything we can do in the meantime? And I go back to the lady who's left now, who was talking about getting a temporary injunction.
Yeah.
Well, we're
So-
stuck in the middle of waiting for all this mitigation to happen.
So, first off, if you wanna pursue this temporary injunction, that's gonna be your thing, it won't be my thing. That's a legal step, and you'll have to deal with that and decide if you wanna do that. So, first off. I wanna be clear about that, so you know what the expectations are. The second thing, with regards to the likelihood, if I do nothing, the likelihood is 0, and if I do something, the likelihood is greater than 0. Right? That's the only odds I put on any work I do in the legislative realm, because I'm dealing with 434 other people who are also the smartest people in the world. Just ask them. And then there's the geniuses in the Senate. So one thing, and I don't want to put this on Patty or Maria, but we'll talk to Patty and Maria about these provisions as well, to be sure that there's a voice in the Senate, in the Senate Conference Committee, and the Senate leadership on these provisions. So I feel that's a good thing. And second, I will talk to the Secretary of the Navy about this, he's got some different ideas, but about supporting these provisions as well, and then supporting, not just authorizing, but either actually putting money in the budget or taking money from somewhere else. Hey, hell man, you're taking money for a frickin' wall, why don't you take a dime of that and put it into mitigation and these other things. I got the plans in my head, and we'll try to make it work. That's how we put this together. Yeah. But again, Patty and Maria have a lot of work to do, so I'm not suggesting that you should have more. But if they heard from the community how important these provisions were, even though you want me to do more than that, if you at least focus on these provisions to help Patty and Maria understand that they are there and support them, that would be helpful to me.
So for us to write to Paddy and Maria is something that we can all do and should do.
We've already been doing it.
Again and again.
I will say this. I want Patty and Maria to know that I encourage. I want Patty and Maria. I want you to write to Patty and Maria, and I want to take the credit for that as much as they want. That I want them to tell you to write to me. All right, I'm just leave it at that. I'm just telling you what is in the realm of possibility of what you can do.
Hi, I'm Hank Adolphi. I live in Admiral's Cove, and literally the jets fly right over my house, every single one of them. You were asking about where we are with the training schedule. If you do the math, in order for them to reach 24,000 operations a year, they would have to fly 3 to 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, 7 to 24 hours. Excuse me.
And they are 7 days.
Okay, so we're still not there. Okay. Secondly,
I'm sorry, you said we're still not there.
The Navy is still not there in terms of the total impact this is going to have. Secondly, there's no doubt that the peak decibel levels, and I'm very happy I have a little decibel meter on my phone, and the peak decibel levels reach 118 to 120 decibels on a regular basis every 3 minutes that the jets are flying. Okay?
Over our
So-
houses.
Over, yeah, I sit on my deck and I listen to them with my earphones on, of course, with my earplugs on, of course. My question is this. You know, we all know there's a noise problem, but if you look at the Navy's own definitions for APZ1, accident potential zone 1, they are clearly in violation of that. Is there anything that our congressional representatives can do? You mentioned oversight. Is there anything that they can do if they are clearly outside their own definitions? Why are not congressional representatives performing their oversight responsibility to get them to stop that?
Somebody in this room may be able to claim that I already knew that your argument was that they're in clear violation of APC 1. I'm here to tell you that that's the first I've heard of it, and I can't hold someone accountable for something that I haven't heard of.
I have notified you
It's okay?
in 2007.
Thank you so much. And Kit's got it written down, and now we can follow up with the Navy on it.
Okay.
Thanks.
That's a false. He just lied.
Solution to the problem. We've all gotten complaints and everything, and everything that's been brought up has been well documented already.
Yeah.
The only solution is for Congress to tell the DOD to stop assaulting its citizens. It's up to Congress to do that. You know it harms us. Everybody here knows it harms us. And I've only been here 5 years. So it's up to Congress to do that. We don't care. They know the sound level readings, they know everything else. The Navy's been fraudulent in their claims. They claim it's only 85 dBs if you average it. You can't average 120 decibels. You hear it, you're damaged. It's that simple. It's all in the figure. So it's up to Congress to do it, period.
Thanks. We want to recognize County Commissioner Helen Price Johnson, who also has her hand up. I wasn't going to recognize her for a question, but she came and I appreciate it, but she also has her hand up. So.
I do have a question. You mentioned county government.
Yeah, sure. Helen Price Johnson.
A couple of times you mentioned county government's ability to do things at the local level. I will tell you that we need congressional funding to make that happen.
So what?
So for instance, any the noise monitoring equipment, how we can access that information. If you want us, if community, what I heard is the community would like to have more studies done on the health effects of the growlers. That has to come from the DOD or from Congress. There isn't local
Which
funding.
I mentioned, which
There
is
isn't local funding for that, so I
Department of Health and Human Services, which I mentioned earlier, that would fund either state or local health district efforts on
I'm
that.
here to partner with you on that.
Yes.
My question has to do with a totally different subject.
Yay!
Jails have become the de facto mental health facilities in our country. We need to change the federal rule that takes away people's rights to medical benefits, veterans benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, on incarceration, not upon adjudication. People who have not been found guilty should not lose their medical benefits. And that's on the taxpayer. The local taxpayers are funding that for the federal government because of that federal rule. So I would really appreciate it if you could help us get that changed. It would be a big help across this whole country.
Yeah, great, thanks. Well, let's follow up on the specifics on that again. But the other thing I would note, your point about jails being the de facto mental health and drug treatment facilities around from county to county, and this is an issue where local electeds like Helen and your new sheriff, as well as county officials throughout the area, including local sheriffs and county council and county commissioners, have really all come together on this point that the jails are for people who have done really bad things, and for instance, the people who might be selling the drugs to drug addicts, and the folks who are addicted to drugs deserve to have services to get them into treatment and then recovery and then prevention in the future for them. And then on mental health, it's kind of the same issue. Our jails are not designed to be mental health facilities. So there's a lot of new federal dollars through the Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act that was passed under President Obama, funded under President Obama, and you know, I'll give one credit to this president. Yeah, believe me, it's tough now. They have continued to fund the Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Act that has resulted in states and local governments and nonprofits building and rebuilding their networks to help with both mental health and drug addiction. Separate from that, the housing issue is an important issue.
Yes.
That where some of these issues all come together, as well as being separate from each other. So, and Helen and the commissioners here have been great on this, and as well as the other local elected. But I know you're on the front line. Appreciate you coming, sir.
What are you, the impeachment issue?
Oh, you know, it's 11:31. So the question was, where am I on impeachment? So, the question about impeachment. First, I do want to emphasize to folks, we have a white paper on the congressional investigations that are currently taking place, and those investigations are important to do. I'd also note, and now getting to the impeachment issue, that there's some folks who are, I think there's 80 members of the House, one Republican, 79 Democrats, who either support impeachment right now or an impeachment inquiry. And my view is that some folks have arrived at the destination without taking the journey right now, that the investigations that are taking place in Congress actually do function as investigations and as impeachment inquiries. There are some who argue that they don't, but the rules of Congress have changed since 73 and 74 and since 1998, where these investigations do actually function more. They have the authority of an impeachment inquiry because Congress has more authority than they did even in 1988 to ask for this information. And if you go through the congressional investigations white paper, you'll see that that although we were frustrated early that the administration was stonewalling, they're still stonewalling where they can, but we're also winning in the courts when they challenge Congress on Congress trying to get information, whether it's on tax returns or on other things. So we're actually winning in the courts, and we have to play that out. The thing is, keep in mind, and I'll get to some other points about this, no president is above the law. I think he ought to be able to indict a sitting president. No president's above the law. That's a principle. That's a principle. That would apply that to any president, not just this president, any president. The second thing I'd say is because no president is above the law, every president has access to the law as well. The president gets to use the law to defend his or her rights. And so you can't say no one's above the law and then try to deny a president the ability to use the courts to defend him or herself either. So we're kind of, getting into two great principles that actually make America great. And so we're dealing with that. So here's the thing about impeachment, just generally. There aren't many specific duties in Article 1 of the Constitution which defines Congress. One of the very specific duties that is defined is the burden of impeachment. It sits on the House and the Senate. The House acting sort of as a grand jury to determine if there are articles of impeachment that we can support, and the Senate functionally as the trial of those impeachment articles. And as a result, because that is so unique, again, not a lot of specifics, a lot of things we can do, but the specifics they're not specifics. Impeachment's one of them. The burden to determine impeachment, in my view, has to be really high. Right? So for instance, I'm not polling on impeachment. I don't need a poll to tell me if people want me to impeach the president or not. And so I see these polls about does the public want to impeach the president or not, or so on. It's like, that's totally irrelevant. The Constitution gives us very specific duty, but also doesn't define what bribery with regards to a president or high crimes and misdemeanors are. The law does define that for other things, but not for impeachment. Bribery is pretty clear what it is. It's not clear what high crimes and misdemeanors is with regards to impeachment. All this, all I'm getting to is this. That's sort of the preface. I never want to impeach a president. I don't want to do that. If I have to, I will. Because that is what, in my view, what it means to carry that burden. You should never want to walk into this wanting to impeach a president, but you may have to do that. And the facts, the data, background, all has to point to that. And I assure you, not only is Congress going through that, and it may result in this, and it may not. But Congress is going through these investigations. I myself, I'm being as impatiently patient as I can, getting through this information, getting through what this president is doing, and this administration is doing to try to come to that decision. But right now, right now, I'm not there yet, and I might get there, and I might not. But also, it doesn't matter what the politics are. And this gets back to the polling issue. And people say, well, you can't do it, there's really bad politics. They impeached Clinton and the Republicans lost seats. And so on. It's like, it's an irrelevant comment. The politics of the situation will not define whether or not I decide on impeachment. The burden of proof and the burden of the evidence will determine whether I support impeaching a president, whether it's this one or the next 17. It just doesn't matter. So that's, I don't really have a headline for you. I guess if you wanted a headline, Rick Larsen never wants to impeach a president, but Rick Larsen is more than willing to impeach a president because the Constitution gives him that authority, and he has to respect that burden of authority in the Constitution. If you want that headline. So a few more. Yeah.
I have a suggestion. The suggestion is, what if we looked at the OLF as a, pardon me, as a toxic waste site and had it permanently decommissioned?
You offer that as a suggestion, and I will take that as a suggestion. But I'm not the one to determine that, and it'd have to be, that's really, I don't say administration, it's administrative.
Sure, I'm just tossing it out as an option.
Sure.
I mean, when these planes fly over my house, I feel like there's extreme form of violence.
And it's a very similar comment to this, the gentleman who's here. I understand that.
Yeah.
Thanks. In the back. We'll do a couple more.
Congressman, I hate to do this to you, but the poor guy has had his hand up.
I'm not taking suggestions from folks about who I should call him.
Well, okay, but
So
why
do you have a
won't
question?
you call on poor Garrett? His arm's gonna fall off.
It will be up on YouTube that you refuse to answer any real questions.
The EIS said they're gonna increase the number, they're gonna build more, which I suspect aren't built yet. But I think that bugs a lot of us is they're shipping 80% of the flights down here. And I don't see any justification why they did that. To me, that's an environmental justice issue. I mean, it's not like a plant in Louisiana that's spewing out chemicals, but they're getting the benefit financially in Oak Harbor. They're getting more people, more housing. Down here, our property values are gonna go in the other direction. So, I mean, it's just, it seems to me those environmental justice statutes might have some application here. I wondered what you think.
So the question was about whether environmental justice statutes have some application, and what do I think of that? I haven't, certainly I know the circumstance you're describing. I haven't looked at applying a lot of that, so I don't have an opinion on it. So I'm perhaps one of the few members of Congress, if I don't have an opinion, I won't give it to you. But we'll take a look at it. Are there specific statutes you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, they get the jobs, we get the
No,
jobs.
I
That's what's.
Yeah, I understand that, but I thought I heard you say there are statutes that.
Well, I think there are environmental justice statutes. It's usually done for places like Louisiana where you got chemical factory next to a minority community.
Yeah,
But
right.
it's the same notion. I mean, one place getting the benefit, the
Oh.
other place getting the pollution.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah, I misunderstood your question. Yeah, I understand, and understand I understand your point. Not quite sure how to address it, but I'll look into that.
Yeah.
In the back of the.
Yeah, I'm from Langley, Washington. I want to defer my question to a commissioner over here, who's got his hand
But I really can't do that. Really can't do that.
Oh, well,
It's
now
not
he's
Congress,
standing up, yeah.
but I'll call on you.
Okay.
All right, I'm Peter Morton on the Langley City Council, so it's
Hey,
very
City Council.
small government. Question is, with regard to climate change, are you a member or do you intend to become a member of the caucus on carbon dividend tax? Carbon tax and dividend?
Oh, do I plan to support that bill?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes. So the question was, do I plan to sponsor the carbon tax and dividend bill? So the Citizens Climate Change Lobby has been trying to get folks on this bill. We're taking a look at it. They were in a few weeks back, local folks, Bob Hallan, for instance, and a few others were in to talk about it. Told me to look at it again. The thing is, I took a cap and trade vote in 2009, pretty tough local vote, but I took it. And so I've got to, just from the very beginning, I have a strong record on this. The Green New Deal white paper that I have that for folks to look at, and I'm not going to support the Green New Deal, but I do go down the list of the Green New Deal principles and all the things we're already doing. I mean, I don't need to wait for a Green New Deal resolution that is aspirational when I'm actually doing the aspiration. And so I want to refer folks to that too. But when you look at Washington State, I think we need to do a little more work because we had, regardless of the campaign last year, pretty strong amount of folks voting against a similar bill, a similar initiative. And so there's probably some work that needs to be done still in our state to be supportive of it. So we're just taking a look at that, as well as the actual policy of it, the actual policy of the language of the carbon tax and dividend bill.
Okay, if we can help anyway, I know that Bob would like to do that, and Bob is chair of the local Citizens Climate Lobby.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I appreciate it. I think one of the challenges we had in Washington State last year with the 16th edition of 1631 on climate change was that the revenue it created wasn't directed towards anything, it just was general fund money, and it seemed as a general fund bill, as opposed to perhaps investing in green infrastructure or investing in retrofits or buildings or things. So I think if we can move toward that route, as opposed to creating a general fund, it might be more palatable.
Well, the House bill is totally different because it returns a dividend to the citizens.
Yeah, and that might be the right approach to take, and it might not be the right approach to take. So,
okay, well,
yeah.
Thank you.
Art, you brought the cupcakes on. This is the last question.
Oh, well, this is hopefully a simple question, but back to impeachment.
They're always.
No, back to impeachment, and it's an honest question.
No, it's not simple.
Well, currently Congress has oversight powers, and it's exercising those, and it's very frustrating as a citizen to watch you be ignored. If you start an impeachment process, does Congress have greater power to subpoena people? That's my question.
Yeah, right. So this gets to the impeachment inquiry question. Yes. Some members say, well, we don't support impeachment, we support opening an impeachment inquiry in there because that gives more powers. So I was saying that the rules of Congress, how we operate and what authorities we have are different than they were in '73 under the Nixon investigation and in '98. So we actually have precedent for stronger authorities that we had then. So some say we don't, that's why we need to have a formal impeachment inquiry. I'm on the side of folks who say that we don't need the impeachment inquiry to exercise those authorities. Now, having an impeachment inquiry doesn't mean, just so we're clear, it doesn't mean the administration either gets to ignore or doesn't get the access to the courts to stop us from requesting or information or getting information. None of that changes. It doesn't preclude any of that. So I'm not quite sure that starting an impeachment inquiry gives us any more than we have now under congressional rules. And keep in mind that, you know, there are 5 committees, as I noted. Ways and Means, looking at the tax returns, as a for instance. Foreign or intelligence, looking at Russia's interference in our election and potential coordination with the campaign. Judiciary, looking at the 10 instances of, you know, possible obstruction of justice. But all you gotta prove not prove all that, but to go to impeachment, you gotta show some reasonable justification, and that has to be, we can't rely on the Mueller report, although it's very important. I said we gotta wait for the Mueller report, but it certainly gives us a pathway to create Congress's record to move forward. So that's why I'm, I get your point. Ultimately, I know, look, again, not a political event, but I know folks are really frustrated and angry about this particular president, this particular administration, the people he's appointed, having his family involved in policy making, all of that, and for those folks, Congress can't move fast enough. But when it comes to impeachment, you still have to move deliberately.
Have you read the Mueller report?
Yeah, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think of it?
I don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the holdup?
It hasn't already happened.
So the question is, why doesn't it happen? Because we just aren't going to accept a special counsel's report, stick a cover letter on it, and say move forward. Congress has to create its own record. We're a separate branch of government. We're not going to take the administration's branch of government, Article 2 of the Constitution, and accept it on face value, although there's a lot to accept on face value. We're going to create our own record, move forward on wherever that takes us. That's our job. That's our responsibility. And we're going to exercise that. So thank you all very much for coming today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, as you notice, Rick Larsen wouldn't even call. It's kind of interesting, but he did lie several times.